All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it is, wherever in this world it is that you are. Welcome once more to another live stream of Alexandra Mayers Live, page by page reading and commentary of the modern English version of the Bible. So today we're going to go back into the first book of Samuel, chapter 18, which covers Saul fearing David and David marrying Michael. And Michael is also a girl's name. Some people would pronounce this Michal, or maybe even Michelle, it's spelled Michal, but we're just going to say Michael because it's easier for me. So let's get started. On a personal note, I'm doing okay. Everything in my immediate surroundings is good. Dealing with a little something online that I thought had already reached a conclusion, but it hasn't, so I'm going to actually go physically to where the problem is and contend with it. But I'm looking forward to 2026. I think it's going to be a good year. One thing I'm not going to put up with going forward are bullies who lie about me. I've just reached my breaking point when it comes to that, so that'll be something that I have to face, and I will. Hopefully, God will help me out with the situation. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. Saul fears David. When he had finished speaking to Saul, the soul of Jonathan was bound to the soul of David, so that Jonathan loved him as his own soul. And Saul took him that day and would not permit him to return home to his father's house. Then Jonathan and David made a covenant, because he loved him as his own soul. So Jonathan stripped him of the robe that was on him and gave it to David, even his garments, his sword, his bow, and his belt. David went out wherever Saul sent him, and he was successful. So Saul set him over the men of war, and it was pleasing in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of the servants of Saul. When they came home, as David was returning from slaying the Philistine, the women came out from all cities of Israel to meet King Saul, singing and dancing, with tambourines, with joy, and with musical instruments. The dancing women sang and said, Saul has slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. Saul became very angry, and this saying was displeasing to him. Therefore he said, They have ascribed to David 10,000s, but to me they have ascribed thousands. Now what remains for him to have but the kingdom? So Saul was suspicious of David from that day and forward. Okay, so Saul was jealous of David when it really comes down to it. And jealousy is an interesting thing. Jealousy drives people to engage in some of the worst behavior. And sometimes jealousy doesn't even have to do with people who are the equivalent of one another. What I found in my life is that it's often been people who just haven't done the work to achieve certain things that I've achieved in my life who are outwardly jealous of, or envious of me. And oftentimes it is jealous and envious people who work the hardest to create hate campaigns and whatnot against whoever they feel competitive with, which is sad. But I guess that's just how life goes at times. The next day, an evil spirit from God came upon Saul, and he raved in his house. David was playing the lyre, as at other times. Now there was a spear in Saul's hand, and Saul threw the spear, for he said, I will pin David to the wall. But David avoided him 2 times. So he's trying to kill David at this point. Man. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him, but had departed from Saul. Therefore Saul removed him from his presence, and placed him as his captain over 1,000. And he went out and came in before the people. David was successful in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. When Saul saw that he was very successful, he was afraid of him. Now all Israel and Judah loved David, because he went out and came in before them. David marries Michal. Saul said to David, "Behold my elder daughter, Merab. I will give her to you as your wife. Only be valiant for me, and fight the battles of the Lord." For Saul said, "Let not my hand be against him, but let the hand of the Philistines be against him." But David said to Saul, "Who am I? And what is my life for my father's family in Israel, that I should be the son-in-law to the king?" So when it was time that Merab, daughter of Saul, should have been given to David, she was given to Adriel, the Meholathite, for a wife. Now Michal, daughter of Saul, loved David, and they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. Saul said, "I will give her to him, that she may be a snare to him, and so that the hand of the Philistines may be against him." Therefore Saul said to David, "For a second time, you may be my son-in-law today." Saul commanded his servants, saying, "Speak to David in secret, saying, Behold, the king delights in you, and all his servants love you. Now therefore become the king's son-in-law." So the servants of Saul spoke these words in the ears of David, and David said, "Does it seem to you a light thing to be a king's son-in-law, seeing that I am a poor man and lightly esteemed?" And the servants of Saul reported to him, saying, "According to these words David spoke." Saul said, "Thus will you say to David, The king does not desire any dowry, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines to be avenged of the king's enemies." But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistines. When his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law. Now the days had not expired, therefore David arose and went, he and his men, and killed 200 men of the Philistines. Then David brought their foreskins and gave them in full to the king, that he might be the king's son-in-law, and Saul gave him Michal his daughter for a wife. When Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal his daughter loved him, Saul was yet more afraid of David, and Saul became the enemy of David continually. Then the commanders of the Philistines went out to make war. And when they went out, David was more successful than all servants of Saul, so that his name was highly honored. Interesting. So even though David is actually progressing Saul's people, because Saul's not able to do it himself, he's jealous and is pretty much doing everything he can in order to thwart David, even though David is doing a lot for him. And that tends to be what happens often, even in today's times. You can have one person who's trying to better a larger group, but because there might be somebody in that group who's envious of whoever that person is, they try to sabotage that person's efforts. It's sad when that happens. I have to believe that in the end, when we pass on and when we're all on the other side, these kinds of situations are addressed. I really hope so, because it really does tire you out in this lifetime having to deal with that kind of thing. So tomorrow we'll go into chapter 19, which goes into Saul trying to kill David again. Maybe I'll read it later tonight. I don't know. We'll see how I feel. Anyway, take care. Have a good night. Bye bye.